right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the news conference portion of this announcement today. We're going to begin with comments from the Auto Insurance Advisory Committee. That will be followed by comments from Minister Toews, and then we will open up for a Q&A. So with that, I would welcome Chris Daniels to the podium.
Thank you. Minister Toews, in December of 2019, as a result of escalating automobile insurance premiums experienced by Albertans, you assigned this advisory committee to develop and provide recommendations to reform and for the reform of the Alberta automobile insurance system so that it is viable, sustainable, provides fair, accessible, and affordable automobile insurance for Albertans, including timely and appropriate outcomes when claims are made. The committee comprised of 3 individuals: Ms. Shelley Miller, QC, Dr. Larry Olhauser, and myself, Chris Daniel. Ladies and gentlemen, today the committee formally delivers our report on fundamental reform of the Alberta automobile insurance compensation model. It details the sources of evidence we collected and our processes for analyzing the case for reform. We also engaged 2 consultants to assist us in our work. Our report lists 89 conclusions as to the reform is necessary and identifies 37 recommendations for the redesigned accident compensation model. These conclusions and recommendations were arrived at completely independently by and with unanimous agreement of the committee. We encourage all Albertans to read the report. Today, we offer a few high-level observations.
Our work focused on the traffic injured and the insured motorists. These are the only 2 genuine stakeholders in the accident compensation arrangement, and neither participate by choice. First, no reasonable Albertan would seek to be injured in a motor vehicle crash. Second, any Albertan who wishes to operate a motor vehicle in the province must, by law, purchase and maintain valid automobile insurance. We knew our findings would affect many service providers in the existing system, including healthcare and legal professionals, insurance brokers and agents, to name a few. It was important to weigh and balance their informed perspectives and interests and those of the general public to find what reforms were required to benefit the 2 true stakeholders. Our paramount goal was to identify improvements so that Albertan traffic injured can more quickly get their lives back on track. For Alberta motorists, they can expect in the future to secure automobile insurance that is more affordable, more available, and less volatile in pricing increases. We realized our proposed redesign of the model would entail redistribution of resources and some market disruption. Some existing service providers might prefer or be required to exit a reformed compensation model, whereas opportunities would emerge for new participants.
We found that since 1988, the significant cause of escalating automobile premiums was due to constant increases in bodily injury loss costs, notably lump sum awards for pain and suffering resulting from the tort system litigation process. Legislative efforts to preserve the tort system with only moderate changes failed to control continuous pricing instability. Reliable scientific evidence from Canada and elsewhere showed us that where tort systems were replaced with no-fault models, traffic accident health outcomes improved significantly due to removal of the tort features, such as delay, conflict, dueling experts, amongst other factors. The committee concluded that due to poor health outcomes and continuous price instability resulting from the current Alberta model, it must be fundamentally reformed to properly serve the interests of traffic injured and insured motorists alike.
The committee recommends the replacement of the existing system with a pure no-fault traffic accident care and compensation model. There are three key elements of a pure no-fault compensation model. First, all traffic injured persons will receive early and appropriate medical treatment for optimal health outcomes and compensation for financial losses without the need to prove the fault was due to a negligent driver. Second, the assessment and benefits under the existing tort model will be replaced with a redesigned regulatory oversight model for evaluating injuries and economic losses, automobile insurance rating, and service provider performance standards. Third, deterrence of risky driving will be achieved with increased enforcement and penalties for traffic infractions, higher insurance premiums for reckless drivers, and more extensive education about the consequences of risky driving. Our proposed redesigned model will reduce insurance costs for the majority of consumers in the range of 9.4 and 10%, and the long term will deliver stability in auto insurance pricing.
Thank you. The foundation of our reform recommendations really focus on improving the health outcomes of all injured parties. Our report is complex and comprehensive, and I'm going to share just four areas from my healthcare background. Number one, we spent time reviewing the current diagnostic and treatment protocol regulations. We asked questions like, what's working, what's not working, how could this be improved? And as a result of those consultations and our review, we are putting forward, based on the common DTPR, a new continuum of care model for all injured traffic individuals. Number two, we have decided to have a new classification, removing the classification of simply strains, sprains, and whiplash-associated disorders. We're changing this classification to a more neutral verbiage. We'll have three types of injuries. Type 1 are those injuries which really are temporary, non-permanent, and most likely will spontaneously recover. Clearly, those will be dealt with by our current primary health care providers, and our report talks about expanding the number of primary health care providers who are able to provide this service. Type 2 we define as those more serious injuries, more likely not to recover spontaneously, probably have more pronounced pain and suffering, and clearly have a loss of life enjoyment. Primary health care providers will probably be involved, but more likely their entrance into the system will probably be through ER doctors who will arrive probably as a result of a crash. They'll have injuries like broken bones, severe lacerations, may be admitted to the hospital. So type 2 injuries are the ones that will require more detailed care. Type 3 injuries are the catastrophic injuries. Clearly those individuals with permanent incapacity. Third thing I want to talk about is for those individuals in type 1 injuries, those that are generally respond spontaneously to recovery, our recommendation talks about incentivizing those injured individuals, incentivizing them to be engaged in their health care and recover earlier. We are also providing opportunities to incentivize the primary health care providers. And lastly, the committee's view is none of this will work unless we have effective management of the injured person. And so we've created an injury navigator who will assist people going through the system and acting on their behalf. In addition, we also want to make sure we manage the process with a multitude of insurance providers, healthcare providers. The system needs to be managed so we can have effective outcomes and focus on improving the health outcomes of all injured parties.
Our pure no-fault model design proposes the creation of a traffic injury regulator that includes a board and tribunal to oversee all 4 arms of accident care and compensation. The first arm will provide accident claims administration and support to help traffic injured advance claims for health treatment, benefits, and economic losses. A second arm will comprise certified and qualified medical experts to provide conclusive determinations of injured persons' extent of recovery and impairment. A third arm will consist of claims assessment panels comprised of financial and vocational experts to provide for traffic injured conclusive determinations of income replacement.
A fourth arm will continue as the Alberta Insurance Rate Board, reconstituted with changes to its current authority, with an improved communication procedures to the traffic injury panels and tribunals, throughout the redesigned model to afford full information to the insured motoring public, including the traffic injured. We propose that individuals remain accountable for bad driving conduct, and their actions should be reflected in increased premiums and enforcement of strict penalties for such actions. We emphasize that a fundamentally reformed automobile insurance system requires significant cultural shift in the attitude and expectation from current practices, participants, and providers. It will also require a transition period to permit all service providers who desire to participate in the reform model to undertake the necessary education, training, business practices to meet the new regulatory requirements. Our report also advocates a certain number of interim reform measures that could be undertaken to potentially reduce insurance costs during this period of transition. The report addresses each of the 7 fundamental goals for reform established by the Government of Alberta at the outset of our directive. We wish to thank all Albertans, including those service providers who gave of their time and insights to assist the committee in completion of their mandate. We also thank the Minister and his colleagues for their support during our deliberations. In conclusion, I would acknowledge Ms. Shelley Miller, QC, and Dr. Larry Holhauser for sharing their expertise and unwavering commitment to this project. We, the committee, appreciated the opportunity and the autonomy to complete this report independently for the benefit of Albertans, the true stakeholders. Thank you, Minister Taves, for the opportunity to serve Albertans in this capacity.
Well, thank you, Chris, and to the committee for all your work that went into developing this very credible report. The report demonstrates the complexity of the issues at hand within automobile insurance in Alberta. Stability, particularly in times like these, is what Alberta motorists ultimately need. The committee's primary recommendation of a privately delivered no-fault system would constitute transformational change. And because of the magnitude of that change, we believe it's important to make the report available to Albertans to review and provide feedback on this key recommendation before final decisions are taken. More detail on the next steps of further engagement will be shared soon. As we discuss systemic reform to ensure a fair and sustainable automobile insurance system, we're taking immediate action on the pressing issue of affordability of auto insurance. Today, I'm announcing immediate measures that will stabilize automobile insurance rates, enhance medical care and benefits, and reduce red tape, ensuring more options and flexibility for Alberta drivers. To contain costs, we will expand the definition of a minor injury under the minor injury regulation. Sprains, strains, and whiplash not resulting in serious impairment constitute a minor injury under the current definition. We're broadening that definition to include conditions arising from sprains, strains, and whiplash that do not create serious impairment. We're using the specific definition that's been proven effective in other provinces. We will change the rate and start date for prejudgment interest on pain and suffering damages in automobile collisions. We will add dentists as certified examiners to improve clarity around jaw issues. We will limit the number of experts that can be used in automobile injury litigation. For injury claims under $100,000, there will be a limit of 1 expert. For claims above $100,000, there will be a limit of 3 experts. Now, a judge or the court can allow for additional experts should it be deemed necessary to properly adjudicate a case. We will remove current restrictions on usage-based insurance programs and allow pay-per-kilometer insurance. Where usage-based insurance has been used, accident rates have dropped. To enhance care and benefits, we propose including dentists, psychologists, and occupational therapists as adjunct therapists under the Diagnostic and Treatment Protocols Regulation, and allow for up to $1,000 in treatment by any combination of these health professionals. We will clarify that 1 in-person visit to a healthcare practitioner counts as 1 treatment visit under the regulation. And we will encourage timely referrals to injury management consultants and include dentists as consultants. We will clarify that accident benefits under an automobile insurance policy can be used for medically necessary equipment, vehicle modifications, and home modifications, and adjust accident benefit levels for inflation. To reduce red tape, we will give the Automobile Insurance Rate Board full authority over grid review and revision and all rating issues, ensuring a more responsive and innovative system. We will adopt a direct compensation model for vehicle repair and replacement. This model effectively means that whether you're at fault or not in a collision, you'll deal with your own insurance company. So what does this mean for Albertans and their automobile insurance premiums? Industry actuaries estimate that these measures will reduce costs in the system by approximately $120 on average per vehicle per year from what they would have been otherwise, recognizing there remains upward pressure on rates today. Every Alberta motorist depends on insurance when we're injured or suffer a loss. The changes proposed today will ensure a more sustainable and affordable automobile insurance system for Albertans in the future. Thank you.
So now we will open it up for the Q&A portion. Operator, can you please put through, or pardon me, I will just reiterate that questions can be asked of the committee members as well as the minister. Operator, with that, can you please put through the first caller?
First question is Safe Kaiser with 660 News. Go ahead, Safe.
Good morning. Thanks. I have 2 questions, both for the minister. Minister, in the statement that went out here in the media release, you keep pointing the finger at the NDP and their rate cap, but whether or not that contributed to why premiums are increasing, don't you feel your government maybe should have had the foresight to come up with some sort of solution before ripping that Band-Aid off and claiming it's what caused the issue?
Well, the rate cap really was a Band-Aid, as you've noted. And by basically limiting rates, as the previous government did, it began to limit insurance options for Alberta motorists. Insurance companies, in some cases, were not offering payment rate plans. In other cases, they were not offering collision or comprehensive. And in some cases, Alberta motorists were struggling to get insurance from their insurance providers. So what was happening as rates were limited at a time when costs were escalating, insurance companies were starting to pull out of the Alberta market. That was basically just resulting in fewer options for Alberta motorists. And if left in place, would have eventually led to the collapse of the automobile insurance industry in the province. That simply was unacceptable.
Safe, do you have a follow-up?
Farron, I do have a follow-up question, but I'm not sure that really answered the question. It didn't seem that your government came up with any sort of solution before ripping off that Band-Aid, and I also want to clarify and get it made abundantly clear by you. It doesn't appear to be anything at all in Bill 41 that actually reduces anyone's insurance rates. It just looks like it's relief for insurance companies, and if those companies feel like passing on any of the savings to you, they might, but there's no guarantee of that.
Well, look, we operate in a competitive environment in the automobile insurance industry in the province of Alberta. And consequently, when cost pressures rise, of course, industry participants will increase their premiums. As cost pressures decrease in a competitive environment, it would be expected that premiums will drop. And again, industry actuaries and independent actuaries have estimated that the measures we're introducing today will result in a reduction of premiums by approximately $120 per vehicle on average. Again, that's relative to what premiums would have otherwise been.
Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Next is Michelle Bellefontaine with CBC. Go ahead, Michelle.
Hi, Minister. I'm just curious about why you're not going forward with the committee's main recommendation, like to move to a no-fault system. Like, why? I mean, I know you said that you're going to want Albertans to read the report and put it out there, but I mean, you asked these folks to examine the system as a whole, and they've identified something that is a real structural issue. So why not just go ahead with it now?
Well, thanks for the question, Michelle. We did appoint, in my opinion, a very expert panel who have produced a very credible report. The key finding or key recommendation in the report, of course, would result in transformational change in terms of our automobile insurance system in the province. And we really believe that we want to hear from Albertans. We want to make sure that this report is public and available to all Albertans, certainly first and foremost Alberta consumers, Alberta motorists that will be buying automobile insurance, but also certainly to legal healthcare experts, insurance industry experts, so that we can receive feedback on this report before final decisions are taken.
Are you just going to wait and see how the public responds? I mean, it seems to me that you're almost afraid of some backlash from some stakeholder or another. I mean, I just think that, I mean, if you've told us that, that we need to see reforms in the system, well, here's a very key, element to reform. So, I mean, why don't you have the political courage to go ahead and do it?
Well, we do have the political courage to make the necessary changes. That's why we're introducing short-term measures. I shouldn't say short-term, interim measures today that will reduce the automobile insurance premiums for Alberta motorists. And again, I really believe it's the responsible thing to do, to take a recommendation and a very credible report that we've received today to Albertans broadly, so that they can engage in the recommendations and engage in this report. We will be identifying our plans on consultation in the days ahead. So again, all Albertans can engage in the key recommendation from the report and from the committee.
Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Next, Dean Bennett with the Canadian Press. Go ahead, Dean.
Oh, good morning, Minister. Just to follow up then on Michelle's question, because the usual way this rolls out is your government presents the report and it presents which of the recommendations it's accepting. And yet today we've got the report and your promise to study it further. Are there any of these recommendations? There's 37 recommendations. Is your government accepting any of these today?
There were some key recommendations that have informed our measures that we're implementing immediately, such as the change in the rate and timing of prejudgment interest, certainly in some of the modernization changes around the rate board. Those were recommendations in the report. So we are implementing some recommendations of the report immediately. But again, the key recommendation, as you've heard from the committee, is moving to a pure no-fault system, a privately delivered pure no-fault system. And on that key fundamental recommendation, we really believe we owe it to Albertans, again, firstly to consumers, but also to all those in the industry, whether it's healthcare professionals, the Alberta legal experts, and certainly insurance stakeholders. We owe it to all Albertans to provide feedback on this report.
I'm sorry, and just as a follow, I might have missed this. What will that look like? Are we going to have a committed type of feedback process, and we will get back to Alberta on this date, or how's that going to look?
We'll be announcing those details shortly. I've already started to put together a committee that will be led by government MLAs to launch this very important round of engagement. And again, what's also very important is that we get this report out into the hands of Albertans.
Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Next is Janet French with CBC. Go ahead, Janet.
Hi there. I have two questions, one for the panel and one for the minister. So I'm just looking at the perspective of Keith McLaughlin. He's a Calgary-based consultant with FAIR, which is a coalition of people concerned about injury regulations. And one of the main criticisms of no-fault insurance is that it's sort of a one-size-fits-all model. So he says in this op-ed in the Calgary Herald earlier this year, the private insurers decide what your injury is worth. They don't have to listen to you, your doctor, or the courts. And he goes on to explain that in this kind of model, it doesn't consider, like if a young person is injured, it doesn't consider their potential lost earnings if they had a lucrative career ahead of them. Or so I guess I'm wondering how you would counteract that argument, what you would say to the argument that it's not an adaptive system to a person's situation.
I invite Shelley Miller.
Thanks very much for the question. I think the answer that the committee would give is that our report, which is very comprehensive and goes into great detail, explains that our version of the new model would not be one size fits all. It would be individualized to each traffic injured situation. And as you heard from Dr. Olhauser, he has described in, I think, good detail how it's planned to revisualize all of the different types and levels of seriousness of injuries. That's why when we talk about expert panels, medical panels, and economic and financial panels, it is intended to allow that kind of individual compensation and measurement. Thank you.
For the minister, I'm just curious, do you personally, how do you feel about no-fault insurance? Is that something you'd like to see adopted based on the recommendations?
Well, the committee make a compelling recommendation in the recommendation of moving to privately delivered no fault. And so again, we're doing two things today. Of course, releasing the report today to all Albertans and also announcing some immediate measures that will provide increased care for injured Albertans that are injured in motor vehicle accidents, but also result in reduced automobile insurance premiums.
So what's your goal? When do you want no-fault insurance in place by?
Well, I would, we haven't set a definitive timeline for the next stage of engagement. What I would expect is that there'll be significant engagement here this fall and early in 2021. And I would say that by mid-year 2021, I would hope that Albertans have had an opportunity to fully review the report, provide comments and feedback, and at that point we'll look at further decisions.
Great. Thanks everyone for your time today.